while German cities are being bombed by the Western Allies, the skies over Japan remain clear.
Germany is much more vulnerable than Japan because it is within flying range of the British and the American bombers. Bombing Japan is not possible for the Allies in 1943 because Japan enjoyed an enormous defense perimeter.
The Japanese have conquered an empire that spans much of Asia. Distance and the capture of several remote Pacific islands have created a defensive perimeter of over 3 million square miles that protects this empire. But American victories at Midway and Guadalcanal have breached this defensive ring.
Japan's home front still has not faced daily air raids, but military leaders know the tide is shifting against them.
Prime Minister Hideki Tojo was an early advocate for war against the United States.
Tojo at this point has been in power in Japan since shortly before Pearl Harbor. As the war situation is going increasingly badly, he needs a victory to be able to continue in power in Japan.
Tojo is driven by honor, he's driven by loyalty to the emperor, and more than anything else, he wants to make sure that Japan escapes the war with its empire intact.
The Japanese intended the attack on Pearl Harbor to be a knockout blow against the Americans. They understood they couldn't win a protracted war against the economic might of the United States.
Even when Japan was winning in the initial phase of the war, Japan's wartime production capacity is roughly only 1/10 of the United States. So by 1943, the government really needs to use whatever it can get their hands on to keep the wartime production going.
To maintain the nation's war effort, Prime Minister Tojo and his government imposed severe austerity on the Japanese people.
Unlike Nazi Germany, in Japan, there never was this phenomenon of trying to keep the Japanese people totally comfortable. In general, Tojo believed that if Japan were to be successful against the Americans and others, in lieu of natural resources, it would take the active mobilization of its human resources, its people.
The message to people is, if they will make these sacrifices at home, then soldiers abroad will keep them safe. They will keep the Allies at bay. They will do their bit if people at home do what they're supposed to do. They must sacrifice everything.
We certainly have rationing going on in the United States. This is on a national scale that is unmatched, really, in a lot of the Allied nations.
Electricity is being rationed. They're relying on sort of primitive ways of even just cooking food and having to burn their libraries for fuel to try and keep warm. No one has enough to eat. You've even got people going into the countryside to forage.
The Japanese are producing cars that run on coal rather than oil because oil is being taken for the war effort on such a large scale.
You've got temple bells, railings, pots and pans being melted down so that they can make bullets and armor.
In many ways, Japan is reverting to almost a pre-industrial society as the war goes on.
Despite the American blockade, Japanese manufacturing continues.
Keeping the wartime production going to some extent is truly remarkable. There is one motto that the Japanese people live by during the war: don't ask or want anything until we win. So essentially, let's sacrifice everything until we win.
Japan remains out of range of American bombers. But Prime Minister Tojo and other Japanese leaders understand that it may be only a matter of time before the Americans secure air bases within flying distance of the home islands.
Once the military leaders saw that firebombs had been used against Germany, they realized that this may be in Japan's future.
The cities that are being bombed in Europe have big stone buildings in a lot of places, and it's still a nightmare. The Japanese use a lot of wood. These are wooden cities. They are particularly vulnerable to these kinds of attacks. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out that that's going to be an issue if all of a sudden you have round-the-clock raids.
There's a big difference in civil defense between Nazi Germany and Japan. The Japanese make the decision not to construct huge concrete bunkers and air raid shelters that could hold thousands of people, thinking that it would be better off devoting their scarce resources to the military and not spending much money on defense.
The Japanese government basically said, look, you have to prepare yourselves. You want a shelter? Dig it yourself. If there was a fire, there would be basically a sand and water bucket brigade that would try to put out the fires this way. And then they came up with the strategy to tear down houses, to isolate areas so that the fire wouldn't spread.
So ordinary people are given hand tools, they're given ropes, and in some cases they're literally pulling down their own homes and carting away the pieces.
In places like Tokyo and Osaka, tens of thousands of houses were torn down.
These really cold messages go out from the government that essentially say, ask your family if you can stay with them. Maybe someone will house you. Yet again, there's a sense that the government just consider ordinary civilians to be expendable.
In the summer of 1944, Japan suffers a major defeat in the Pacific. A key piece of Tojo's inner defensive ring has fallen. After a month and a half of heavy combat, Japan has lost Saipan and the entire Mariana Island chain. This puts the Americans and their B-29 superfortress in range of Japan's major cities, including Tokyo.
For the Japanese, the loss of the Marianas is absolutely catastrophic, because they understand that there is this new bomber out there called the B-29, and they know that bomber will now be within range of almost all of Japan.
The fall of Saipan is a huge psychological blow back at home in Japan, because there's been this pact that if you do your bit at home, if you sacrifice, if you put up with rations, if you work hard in the factories, we will protect you. The Allies will come nowhere near the home islands.
So the government has failed its most fundamental promise to the Japanese people. And there's only one person who can take the fall for this: Tojo.
There is an undercurrent in Japan that people are feeling very hostile towards Tojo. There are stories of people phoning up Tojo's wife saying, "Why has your husband not killed himself yet?"
Now it's the government who has to make a sacrifice, and they choose a scapegoat.
Emperor Hirohito has lost confidence in Tojo, and he steps down.
Launching from the Marianas, hundreds of B-29s begin bombing Japan's cities. Osaka, Kobe, Nagoya, Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are killed.
When the serious bombing of Japan starts, it will be unrelenting. The enemy is there. They're right above you. The cities will become killing grounds.